What's up, everybody? Mitch. We're here at Newred Hobbies on a Sunday, getting some practice in before heading out to GS Hobby in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Check out a couple laps of my 22 5.0. Just got a brand new car, kind of feeling it out, getting kind of all the dog bones and everything to get broken in, and ready to go up there and do some racing. I wanted to touch base with everybody. There was some questions asked on Facebook on the 22 Empire. Thank you, by the way, for everybody that follows the 22 Empire, about some of the things that they're asking about what I do with the cars. One was what I put in the transmission for lubricant, and I really just put black grease on the diff gear itself. So when I put the diff gear, the whole diff in the transmission, it kind of all works itself together, and you have kind of everything kind of meshes together. Really, that's all I do with it. The other thing I do, and maybe it's not recommended, but there's two screws that hold the transmission case together, like as you would have it out of the car. I don't put those two screws in the transmission case. I leave those out because the transmission case is held together with screws from the bottom and the screws from the top, and the screw going across for the waterfall. So I don't put the other two screws in there. I don't know if it helps or not. It seems to be a little bit freer, maybe. So that's what I do on the transmission side of things. The other question was asked was about diff height. And it seems like the consensus here recently has been to have the diff height 1 millimeter or a little bit more, which we can go now 1 millimeter or 1.75 higher, and with the hubs that we have. So that seems to keep the car flatter, doesn't make it squirrel as much. Square, I would say it would drive. And the other question that was asked was setup and what I would change from what the setup would be. So let me touch base first with setup as a whole. Like coming here today, I put Dakota's setup on my car, and I followed it as close as I could get it. And because there is a couple different things that I know I feel are a little bit better for me, like say that the spindles being 3 millimeters instead of 4, or vice versa. For me, 3 millimeters, the spindle being in the center, seems to be, or the the trail part to be in the middle. So 3 millimeters, this is a better steering for me, feel. The lower wing for me on the front, feel wise, feels a little bit better. But probably what needs to be for you to have a setup just like an 8 scale, these cars are getting more complicated. They're getting more on the lines of touring car, I would say. The inputs that are in setup sheets, there's a lot more of them. It's not getting less, it's getting more. We can change the diff heights now, so we're getting closer to the touring car. So for setup wise, I would think my suggestion to everybody would be to get as close as you can. Do as much, even the littlest of things could make a huge amount of difference on the track or going around the track. I mean, just in camber links, if you have say you have it in one camber link hole and you could have it, 2 or 3 millimeters over from that location, just because you didn't change that part, could make a huge bit of difference on the car going around the track. So probably for for the most part, for setup, I would make sure that you follow the setup as close as possible. For me, I think a lot of myself and going around the track, roll centers for me seem to be a big part. I can kind of tune the front of the car by running either 3 millimeters for the bulkhead or 2 millimeters. 2 millimeters is going to steer a lot more. It's making the mechanical part of the front of the car stiffer. 3 millimeters, it's making it softer, but it's pushing a lot more. So for me, lap time wise, I like to have it at just 2 millimeters instead of the 3 that comes with the car. So, which is a tuning option. The back, we normally run 1 up. I'm right now at 0, so I have that lower also, so it keeps the car a little bit flatter. Newred Hobbies here is slicks, kind of higher grip, little dusty. A little bit about his 22 4 2.0, and we both, myself and Eric, we both have the Zeke rear end setup, I guess you can say, where we have the 22, you have the 5.0 arms on the rear here. And just recently, within a month or so, you changed this. You've been running the stock arms and the stock setup in the back, which this setup Zeke actually gave me, and we got it up on the blog. So if you go to, I'll put the link for the blog for this in the comments, so you guys can check out how this actually all goes together. Zeke did a very detailed description of how it all goes together and how it works in the blog. And Eric, you've run it here. You've run it both ways, actually. And can you tell us what you feel that this has done from the stock setup for the 22 2.0?
With the original setup, I would always run ball diffs in the front and the rear, because I felt when I would go to a gear diff in the front, it would just get super aggressive on me.
Right.
And I would be chasing it. When I switched over to Zeke's setup, I was able to put the gear diff in the front, and it just feels really good now. It's balanced, you know. It's not hard to drive. It works really well together, and I really like it. I've been running it on. I barely change anything on this setup from loose tracks to this kind of traction. I haven't ran on turf, so I don't know about that. But everywhere else, it just seems to be really good.
Right, and you're running 13.5?
Yeah, 13.5.
13.5 seems to be a pretty good fit for this car. I mean, this car is probably one of the best cars for 13.5, I would say.
Yeah, it just has a crazy amount of corner speed.
Yeah, it is. My car here, it with it being slicks, it's very stable, even though it's higher grip. My car's really flat, stays really good in the corners, has good traction. So 13.5, what motor and gearing and stuff? Because I know there's a lot of guys that ask me about gearing for 13.5 for four-wheel drive, and I have no clue. So can you tell everybody what motor and gearing you're running? I'm
running the Trinity Monster Max 13.5 certified. Okay. And I'm at 78.26 on gearing. Okay, so we're changing the spur gear a little bit from the stock spur gear for 13.5. So. Right. It gets the ratio better from where you need it to be. Yeah, you can run an 81 and go with a smaller pinion, but it doesn't have the top end. Right. You can still run that, but if you want the top end, you got to go with the smaller spur gear to get it really moving good. Right. So and then you have ball diff in the back. Yeah. And then gear diff in the front. What do you have oil in the front? 50,000. 50,000 in the front. Okay. I'm like 30,000 I think on mine. I'm trying to get mine to rotate a little bit harder for me, and it's still like almost two stuck for me. So I'm trying to get it to get a little bit more. But here practicing and trying to change some things and get everything better before we head out to Fort Smith, Arkansas. Eric's had a chance to go with us to Fort Smith, Arkansas, but his work is totally crazy painting bodies, so he unfortunately can't make it with us. But yeah, if you're in the Arkansas, Fort Smith, Oklahoma, Dallas area, and I'll put the link to the race on there. Come check us out. If you can't race, just come check it out. It's a good environment, awesome hobby shop at GS Hobby, and keep checking back with us. Thanks for following.